Hi, I'm Ramina Ganga, and I'm going to be talking about the case of the Ta'afulicia brothers. Um, for my final, so my intro is I chose to talk about a case. So this case took place in Seattle back in January of 2016. The case involved a load of different people. There were actually 6 people involved in the whole case, but they focused mainly on the 3 brothers that actually did the shooting. So the case of the jungle shooting involved James and Jerome Ta'afulicia and their youngest brother Joseph, whose identity was not released during the trial or at the time of it happening because he was a minor during it all. And then I will explain how social disorganization theory applies in the case and the weaknesses of the theory. So the basic storyline of the whole entire case, on the day of January 26, 2016, 6 masked males arrived at a recycling center on bikes, and they used the trails off of Airport Way South to get to the caves under I-5 in Seattle, Washington. 3 brothers by the name of James, who was 17, Jerome, who was 16, and Joseph, who was 13, stepped into a homeless encampment known as the Jungle. Their intention at this camp actually was to find a drug dealer who was known as Fat, and he owed their mother $500. Their mother's name was 37-year-old Lisa Valassi. Coincidentally, during the time of this, it was their mother Lisa's birthday as well. So the 2 oldest, James and Jerome, were armed with a .45 caliber handgun for James, and they purchased that off of the street. And then Jerome had a .22 caliber handgun, which actually belonged to their mother. According to court records and testimony, they were surrounded, or when they walked up onto the camp, there were people surrounded by a fire pit. A man who goes by Wayne was shot in the chest with the .45 caliber. A man named James Tran, who was 33, was shot twice in the chest by the .45, and he actually died on the way to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. Wynn's girlfriend, Tracy Bauer, who was 47, and their friend Amy Jo Chenault, who was 41, were both shot in the back. All 3 of those people survived their injuries at the hospital. And then as the group of the robbers left the encampment, someone shot the .22 caliber handgun into a tent, which hit a woman named Janine Brooks. She was also known as Janine Zapata. It hit her in the chest, which actually left her dead at the scene. When the 3 brothers left, they left with $100 worth of black tar heroin and about $200 to $300 in cash. It said that they gave their mother $100 and then they spent the rest of their money on food. And then later on, an informant who was with the brothers was actually recording their conversation that he had with the brothers, and he caught the youngest brother laughing when he told the informant what he saw during the shooting. Joseph recalled that he grabbed Fat's belongings and his drugs, and then he ran away. And then the informant actually paid the brothers $500 for the .45 caliber handgun, which eventually helped police match the bullet casings at the scene to the gun. The .22 caliber handgun was later found in the boys' tent that they lived in. On February 1st, 2016, the boys were arrested and taken into custody. When they were arresting the youngest brother, Joseph, the police actually found 2 $100 bills on him that had been marked by the police when the informant was purchasing the .45. All 3 brothers were charged with the same charges, with 2 counts of murder in the first degree and 3 counts of assault in the first degree. Because Joseph was so young at the time, he was only 13, he remained in juvenile court while still being held upon the same charges as his older brothers. He was convicted in May in 2018 in the juvenile court. According to his disposition records, Joseph will remain in custody until his 20th birthday, where he will be on parole for 6 months, and then he will transition back into the community. It is said in the trial that he did not shoot anybody. After 2 mistrials of the case, all 3 brothers were convicted of their charges. However, James and Jerome were charged as adults and they were sentenced to 40 years each in prison on August 2020. So Joseph currently, I believe, is still in prison for 1 more year as far as I know, and then he will be on parole for 6 months. So the theory I chose was social disorganization theory to apply to this case. Social disorganization theory suggests that a person's environment and location has a greater significance than their personality or their characteristics when predicting their criminal behavior. The Ta'afulicia brothers had been homeless for many years. They lived in tents and a Chevy Suburban with their mother. The boys were actually known to be in and out of foster care, and they were exposed to horrible conditions that no child should have to bear. At the time of the shooting, they were actually living in tents just on the outskirts of the jungle. The jungle was also a dangerous place. It was a homeless encampment right under a bridge on the I-5 freeway. So it's in Seattle. It was right off the neighborhood in Beacon Hill, right by Airport West South apparently, but it was known to be notorious for multiple cases of criminal activity and drug use. There were many reported shootings, and there were even reported bodies found on the camp. So eventually they shut it down by the city, and it was cleared out in October of 2016, just towards the end of the year of the same year that this case happened. The family, the mother, Lisa, and the 3 brothers, James, Jerome, and Joseph, were all known by the police already. James was known to be charged with making false statements to the police back in 2015, and he also has convictions for robbery and theft that he committed when he was 14 in 2012. Jerome was charged with stealing a backpack from a pier in middle school while armed with a taser, and he is also accused of carjacking a taxi and also threatening the taxi cab driver, and then they also led police on a pursuit, and this was done with one of his friends also when he was younger. So I think that social disorganization theory really applies to this case because it really kind of puts pressure on the area that they live in, and the fact that they were homeless and they lived in poverty and they had already been exposed to drugs and violence, and they had a gun from their mother, and they had to live in the car, and it just really puts a lot of pressure on them and how they must live and adapt to their own environment. It is nowhere near close to what any of us have to endure or had to endure. So it's a way for them to socialize, and it was just their way of trying to fit into their world and survive in their dangerous kind of environment that they have to live in. So with that just kind of falls into delinquency. Being able to steal and stand up for yourself and be tough and use criminal violence and things like that just in order to survive and get money. And the money was owed to their mother, so they wanted to pay her back and kind of give her a present, I guess, in that kind of way. Weaknesses of the theory, I believe, is because disorganization theory is focused so much on the community. Delinquency is just an easy way for them to get by and socialize while living on the streets. Weaknesses of theory can be that the theory heavily relies on the location and the economic stability of the people in question. So it kind of just assumes that most neighborhoods of high poverty and possibly single parent homes are socially disorganized already. This doesn't really get into the specific details of an individual neighborhood that make them different and socially organized in their specific way. For instance, it's kind of just like almost a generalization rather than trying to get into that community and really understand why and what it is that can be done to better influence that specific community and the violence and criminal activity that takes place there. According to certain societal norms, juvenile delinquency results from a disruption of social disorder and no social control within a community. But if the cities aren't putting in that effort into helping the socially disorganized neighborhoods, then there is no progress being made. Kind of like there was a step there when they decided to close down the jungle encampment, but then I couldn't really find much information on what happened to all of those people who did live in that encampment area, whether if they were better compensated or the city helped them find shelters or anything, or if they were just removed from the area and then displaced again. So that is a thing as well. And then my references are all here. And then that is the end of my presentation. Overall, I think that social disorganization theory was one of the main theories. I also believe that labeling theory was one, also just because of the community and the background history that they already have. They were already known by the police, so it kind of just already gives them that label that they are dealing with their criminal. They already have a record as well. So yeah, thank you for watching.